All right, kiddos. Today, uh, I am answering somebody's question. I'm recording this over the weekend, so I might surprise some people with an early video. I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can upload twice a week as best as I can. I'm still trying to figure out my schedule, but anyway, so uh, today's a little bit more chilly. Anyway, enough small talk. We have to get to the business. So I was asked a question maybe like 2 weeks ago or something. Just noting right now, the next time somebody asks a really loaded question, I'm gonna ask if they want to remain anonymous or if I can use their username because I don't know when people need privacy or not, but this is the final one that I'm gonna just go ahead and go anonymously. So this person asks, what can we do to prevent others from transitioning? And that is a very good question. And I started thinking about it in the perspective of what I needed uh, as a teenager. And the first thing I would say is I wish that the first professional I went to, which was my gender therapist, I wish she could have challenged me and like actually did some cognitive behavioral therapy as opposed to just going with my impulses and whims. And I think that would be very beneficial for other people who think that they're trans. Uh, and I I know that sounds like conversion therapy, but it isn't. And I know that goes a hole into another whole rabbit. It goes into another rabbit hole, you know. We're like, oh, conversion therapy, that's horrible. That's like trying to convert the gays into straight people. You can't do that. That's unethical. But from what I've seen, it's like being gay is just something that you is. It's not something that requires surgery or any medical intervention. Whereas thinking that you're the opposite sex, that's a completely different ball game. And I have a lot of things that go into that, and I'm not going to do it right this second. So, therapy, I wanted my therapist to be able to say, hey, I don't think you actually have this. I wanted my therapist to use, and my doctor later on, I wanted them to use discretion, but I don't think that I don't know about legally, but I know that socially and um, monetarily, they were like, yeah, I am totally obligated to just see where you're going with this. I believe that this therapist was like, well, I can't just deny this girl uh her her newfound, her novel uh gender identity. If I did that in my practice, if I denied her these things, then that would make me look really bad, unethical, and, transphobic. And the same thing with my doctor later on. I think instead of being like, I'm a hero, I was thinking about that saying, discretion is the better part of valor, which I think is so fitting here because valor is like, you know, unsheathing your sword and being like, I'm so brave, I'm the hero here. And I believe that's what my doctor and my therapist were thinking. Like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to look like such a good person. I am so brave by going against the transphobes or whatever. And I didn't need that. I didn't need somebody to just enable me. I needed somebody to challenge me. And so what I would like to see is the ability to just talk about this kind of stuff and not having somebody immediately pull out the label, you're a transphobe, or whatever other nasty, stupid names that these trans activists or like this. And then, their doctor who chopped off their dick is like, oh yeah, that money, raking it in. I don't care if you changed your mind later, I still got it. You paid for my $1 million house. Shit like that. Even if you had a letter from your therapist, which I didn't, um, that doctor should still be able to kind of use their own discretion. And I believe not just getting your therapist's letter and then being like, oh well, the therapist said this, so you must have that. I think even a doctor should use some discretion, because when I went in to see my doctor, he just took my word for it, and just I feel like that is so unethical. I think instead of just like, you know, receiving a letter or just taking a patient's word for it, I think they should do a little bit more evaluating than that. But yeah, I mean, it goes into the whole gatekeeping thing. I personally think that kids, yeah, who think that they're trans, or teens who think that they're trans, should be like in therapy, gender therapy, right up until maybe they're 20. And like, in my opinion, I think the age should be 25, because then that's when your personality is more solid for people. But I think 20 is the lowest. That's maybe okay, because teens and kids are so fluctuating, and they're very extremely aware of what other people around them are doing, what's their opinions, and they're sponges. They just absorb everything, and they want to take on so many different identities as they're going. So having someone being like, stop, let's think about this for the next 10 years or something, slow down, uh, even though that kid might suffer, I would rather have that kid suffer as a teenager than suffer with a mutilated body, and then regretting every decision they made when they were in high school, or even their little decision when they were prepubescent and their parents put them on puberty blockers. Yeah, so I know gatekeeping is very controversial and not a very pleasant thing to talk about, and neither is uh, conversion therapy. I know, but I think it's absolutely necessary to prevent people from making a huge mistake. I think that kind of leads into parents, like deciding for their kid, and uh, like I read some stories where a parent, or parents, I suppose, again, it's mostly the mom. Parents will be like, "Oh well, my kid is saying that they're a girl, but they're biologically a boy, or whatever the case may be, opposite sex." And I'm gonna go with what society is saying right now, the trends and the newfound ethics of, you know, of being trans and stuff. I shouldn't deny this kid, um, a transition, so I'm gonna put them on puberty blockers, and, if they really want to be trans or the opposite sex in their future, then this will be really good for them. Like, I think, that parents need need to be. I was gonna say parents need to be educated on this, but parents don't go to parenting school. I think when it comes to a parent being like, oh my gosh, my kid, especially a parent who was like, I'm liberal, I'm a Democrat, but I just don't know what's really going on with my kid. And so they're going into it like, they're juggling all this new stuff, and they're like, holy shit, what's going on? So, and then that parent goes out to professionals and people who they think know the right things. And those professionals should be able to tell them, like, instead of going like, oh, well, your kid's going through this, so therefore you should be encouraging, yada, yada, yada. I think, I think parents should be, like I said with the therapists, they should be educated on, man, that is getting bright. Parents should be educated on the fact that when a kid is saying, "Oh, I'm the opposite sex," it a lot of the times, and this one study I was looking at, I'm the sun is beginning to set, I guess. Oh my gosh. Um, where was I? Um, that kids 70%, this is what the study said, 70% of kids who think they're trans will grow out of it eventually. So that's why I'm doubling down on, when a kid thinks they're trans, they should have to wait until they're 20 in order to um, decide whether or not they actually want to transition. And I'm also thinking, um, kind of off topic a little bit, like, or not off topic, but like steering it a little bit. Said in another video about gender neutral parenting, and this definition I'm talking about is the gender neutral parenting, which is not gender neutral, it's gender stereotyping to the extreme, but the opposite, where we're gonna introduce Nicholas to um, girl toys and get him into dresses because that's what little boys should be doing, right? Yada yada, that kind of gender neutral parenting. That should just be off the table completely. Those parents who are very aware of these, the gender politics and all that, and they are extremely liberal, uh, like way, way, way more than just the normal liberal parent who's confused. So these parents who are like, that they have an agenda and they want their kid to be trans for some ungodly reason. Oh my god, you can't decide as a parent. You can't decide your kid's gender or their interests. Anyway, so the some people say that it's criminal what they're doing and it's child abuse. And when it comes to the parents with an agenda, I think it is in that realm of criminality. If anything, if it's not put into the legal system, then I would say other parents should like deeply look down upon it and discourage it. And, other parents who are more sane should be like, okay, Nancy, we need to talk, and here's some studies on this. Mention gender identity disorder, and that's no longer on the DSM-5. And I read about it a little bit, and every time I looked into like, why is it not why is it not a mental illness? There was nothing that anybody was talking about. It was just, maybe I'm just a bad researcher, but what I saw was, oh, it just isn't, because stigma. And that was the only reasoning that I could see. That's why it's not on the DSM-5 anymore. And I'd like to argue a little bit that it should remain on the DSM-5. That way it can be diagnosed. Because if we can diagnose it, then doctors and therapists, mostly the gender therapists, can say, hey, you don't actually have these symptoms. You're not exhibiting XYZ, so I'm going to deny you the letter that you want, that you egregiously want, desperately seeking. Like, I'm not going to give you that. And I'm sure some people who know more about it than I do will be like, hey, wait a second. Or maybe they'll have more information. And I do encourage you to, impart your wisdom and knowledge. Because I don't really know. Another aside from this, not digression, it goes in with it. It goes in kind of with the gender neutral parenting sort of thing. I'm not entirely sure about this opinion that kids should be exposed to gender non-conforming people. And I thought about this. Like, if kids were exposed to more gender non-conforming people, it could help them just accept their gender. And I think that is a step in the right direction. But I'm also thinking, like, so long as young teens have uh, social issues and they can't really make friends too much and they're depressed and anxious and whatnot, and then they see transgender people online celebrating being trans and loving life, living their best life and all that, I think, and especially with other kids being around, being like, ooh, look at this trendy thing, let's be that. It'll solve all my problems. Then that kid, even if they see the gender non-conforming people, they're probably still gonna be like, oh well, I guess I'm gonna go with trans. But I do think that gender non-conforming influences are good. I just don't think they're the number one absolute best uh, for preventing other people from transitioning. Kids do need to know that they, like I said in my gender neutral parenting video, kids kids will get more confused if they have really strict gender roles. You know, boys need to play in dirt and climb trees and get splinters, whereas girls need to play with dresses, dolls, and play dress up with each other. Yada yada. Like, and if they don't do it, we gotta slap them. Or the other way around. If Johnny's not into dresses, then slap him. Like we need to show that gender is so intertwined with each other. Like, so many males have a female characteristics, and so many females have male characteristics, and they're also intertwined with each other. But those women are still women, the girls are still girls, boys are still boys, and men are still men, but they have these other characteristics. That doesn't make them less of a woman or a man. It's just interwoven so much, and that's what we need to know, and we need to accept these things. And I think that might be a step in the right direction. And now this one, uh, I don't I don't know how effective it would be to a kid who's like as stubborn as I was. But I think that potentially, if I had been exposed to as a teenager, if I had been exposed to detransition stories, especially the ones that are like, um, I did, I had the double mastectomy and I had the phalloplasty, the one where you get a dick, or the one where you make your clitoris like kind of like a dick kind of. I don't know what that one's called. If I saw these horror stories of these people being like, I totally regret what I did, I might have been like, hmm. Although I can kind of see myself as a teenager being like, well, I'm not like that, so I don't have to worry. So it's a little bit like, I guess it would really depend on how sensitive your kid is, but I think it might have changed my mind. And not just like detransitioning, but I also think like um, medical stuff would have like dissuaded me because I was kind of a hypochondriac as a kid. And if I were to have been shown like, oh, if you go on testosterone for a really long time, your ovaries will stop producing eggs and so they might atrophy within you and then rot. I would have been like, duh! Oh my god! I'd have dead things inside me. I might have pumped the brakes on my own transition. But I think, I don't know. I think because I was so stubborn, I might have also just been like, oh well, I just remove it. But then you'd have the medical thing of like, well, if you remove that, then there's issues with um, forced menopause at a young age. And I haven't really looked into it, but forcing menopause at a really young age is not good. That's all I know. It's just not good. Being prolonged on cross-sex hormones can potentially lead to a different disease, and uh if I had just been told like not just the menopause thing, the forced menopause, but also like um developing certain cancers potentially, and um and I also wish I knew this, that uh I was looking at Jack W's video. I don't remember exactly which one, but she was talking about, she's another transitioner by the way. She was talking about how she was basically getting arthritis. And um and I believe that uh my my time being on testosterone, there we go. My time being on testosterone was when I was at my first job. I started developing osteoarthritis in my hip, and it only got progressively worse. And once I got off testosterone, it didn't get any better. So I'm thinking, and I don't think I can really like get real like solid evidence for it. I'm just speculating that I think that I think that's what caused my osteoarthritis. So, if I'd been told that, that my joints would like, you know, fuck themselves over, I might have been like, okay, maybe not. I think being warned about these things medically would dissuade some kids from transitioning. So there needs to be more medical stuff out there saying, you could undergo this if you do that. And we don't know enough about hormones long term to to really use it. It's like, I mean, you're putting somebody through an unnatural process. Your body's not meant to be producing, this much testosterone or this much estrogen. And we're not really supposed to, surgeries aren't natural, obviously, so the body's gonna react weirdly to it. My points are kind of all over the place. So this next one goes, again into the therapist and doctors things, but uh, the extended of that, parents, friends, uh, whoever else, extended family should be able to sit down their friend, whoever this person is who's thinking that they're trans, they should be able to, instead of just blindly accepting it and being a cheerleader for their transitioning, they should be able to say, like, challenge them, ask questions like, have you always felt this way? Like, what makes you really think that? Uh, I don't know any other challenging questions off the top of my head, but I'm sure other people can think of them pretty easily. So that should definitely be encouraged instead of being like worried that they're going to be transphobic if they ask any questions. People should be, again, like I said, willing, being able to do these things and open up a discussion. That's definitely what we should be doing. Because, when you first come out, you're like coming out to friends and your family first, and they should be the first roadblock that you come in contact with. And they should be able to hopefully try to like dissuade you. That'd be nice. I mean, I was like scrutinized a little bit, like, oh, you weren't, you never exhibited uh these, gender dysphoria. Basically, you never exhibited an discomfort from being your gender and your sex. But I think most of all, like when it comes to therapy, uh, like I said with cognitive behavioral therapy, uh, in that like a therapist's first instinct when it comes to their gender therapy and with their patient, it shouldn't be, oh, they probably have gender dysphoria. Their knee-jerk reaction and instinct should be, let's talk about trauma. They should be looking into complicated post-traumatic stress disorder, post-traumatic post-traumatic stress disorder, anorexia nervosa, uh, body dysmorphia, any kind of impulse, poor impulse control should be looked into. Autism is a big one. Schizophrenia is also another one. Psychosis is another one. Those should be looked into and examined. And I also think uh, that, going with trauma, sexual abuse is a very big one. That's why a lot of people tend to think that they're trans, because they're trying to get away from it. And I like to pull a reference to when morbidly obese people become morbidly obese is pretty much most likely because they were sexually abused. And so they pile fat onto themselves so they can be as unappealing as possible. And that's what the fat is the answer. And then I see, uh, and then the therapist should also be looking into, uh, are you gay? Are you lesbian? Do you have internalized homophobia? Let's look into that. And then, I don't know so much for boys, but definitely for girls, a therapist should be looking at internalized misogyny, which is what I had. And those are like the biggest underlying issues that a lot of these kids think, or a lot of these kids go into. And, you know, once the trauma's resolved, they tend to go like, well, wait a second, I'm not trans. And then, they go back to what they were, and then they accept themselves. And then, my last point, I don't know too much about it either. Big pharma, I know that's like a kind of a big thing that people are talking about right now, but I don't have too big of an opinion on big pharma. But I know that uh, people are setting their, eyes on, I hate the lighting in here. People are setting their eyes, big businesses are setting their eyes on the money pot that is transitioning, because you have, as a doctor, you have pretty much a patient for life because they need hormones and they need your distribution of those drugs. So I don't know the solution for that, but I can definitely say that it's a problem and it needs to be addressed. And I think that's pretty much all I can do for that. So yeah, I hope that answers the question of how might we prevent other people from transitioning, and not in a transphobic way, but in an ethical, I don't want you to regret these decisions. Well, that's a little bit better. I could have been over here. Whatever. But yeah, so that's that. If you have more questions, I hope that I can answer them. But yes, you comment them down below and stuff. And I also keep forgetting that logistics. Like, comment, subscribe. Or don't. I don't know. But yeah. I'm gonna be trying to post again Wednesday or Thursday, hopefully. So we'll see. Yeah. Goodbye.